Well, you said you don't support BLM because of a statement that they made at one point. And they actually stated, we disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure requirement by supporting each other as extended families and villages that collectively care for one another, especially our children, to the degree that mothers, parents, and children are comfortable. And you yourself are in a nuclear family. Your parents and your brother was in a nuclear family as well. I think what BLM is saying is that although most people do prefer a nuclear family, we understand that sometimes you have blended families and we still want to accept those as actual families. But you have an issue with that.
Well, here's my issue with it is I don't think it actually is directed at advancing the interests of Black lives, right? One of the things that people don't understand is you had actually more stable Black household formation in this country. And it's not just Black. Actually, it's true for white and other races too. But since you asked about Black family formation, we're going to stick to that topic because it's even more pronounced there. Back in the 1950s, you had a higher rate of Black children being born into stable two-parent households than you do today. Part of the reason is Lyndon Johnson's so-called Great Society. And Lyndon Johnson, I think, was a disastrous president for the United States. I don't think he cared that much about the Black families he professed to actually care about. And I think his policies have been disastrous for the Black Americans who have suffered as a consequence. You have a fatherlessness rate in Black households over 40% today. It was way lower than that back in 1950 and 1960. Now, if you want to look at regardless of race, this is true for Asian, white, or Black, the best predictor of somebody graduating from high school, somebody not ending up in prison, somebody doing economically well, is whether they actually grew up in a stable two-family household. You're something like 8 times more likely not to graduate from high school, 10 times more likely to graduate to end up in jail, some magnitude more likely to end up in poverty if you did not grow up in a stable two-family household. So the irony is actually, if you look at a lot of the inequality in outcomes that you see, forget race, right? Across all races, people who grow up in single-parent households versus people who grow up in dual-parent households, that's where you see those disparities. Now you throw the filter back on, it turns out that that rate is a lot higher in Black households than it is in Asian households. Say, that explains a lot of the difference. You don't have to take it from me, take it from Ben Carson. He's a successful Black American in the United States of America. You could take it from other people who have actually done the hard work and revealed that actually is one of the major causes of disparities, is that in family formation. So then let's say you care. Is that a problem worth solving? Yes, it is. Then your organization says Black Lives Matter. I think my first impulse is you probably don't give a damn about Black lives, actually. If you're calling for dismantling the greatest source of actually prosperity and lifting people up of any race, including Black families, if you're calling for dismantling the greatest known form of governance to mankind. And you can look at how people were doing in the 1950s versus today. Why has Black progress been impeded? I think a big part of the reason why is Lyndon Johnson's policies that created disincentives for Black family formation. So that's where I was coming from. It's this kind of same thing that kind of bothers me is you can't say one thing and do another. That's a kind of fraud, actually, right? You can't say, Don Lemon at CNN, that I want to foster open dialogue without actually engaging with certain views that a significant percentage of people in this country actually share, or with certain tellings of American history that you can have that open debate. In the same way, you can't say Black Lives Matter while calling for dismantling probably the single most effective lever we have to lift up not only Black families, but all families, is the revival of the nuclear family as a positive affirmative value. And eventually over time, I started calling BLM Big Lavish Mansions, because that's where their proprietors, that's what I'm going to call them, proprietors, were spending their money. It was structured as not as a nonprofit corporation, but a for-profit corporation. You know, I'll tell you about my house. We were grateful to live in a house we do, but that BLM mansion I saw looked a lot nicer than the house I live in, off of donations that people made thinking they're lifting Black lives up, where they're only lifting the quality of life of about 6 Black Americans who happen to enjoy and avail themselves of that household. It's wrong. It's a form of fraud. And so do I care about the mission of lifting up Black lives in this country? I do. Do I care about lifting up the mission of American lives in this country, regardless of skin color? I do. And it's because I do that I reject one organization that tries to monopolize and appropriate, and talk about misappropriation. That's an appropriation problem of a cause that they're not even actually advancing, but really enriching the people at the top of it. If you have it in this podcast, I don't know if you have the ability to put up the covers of, I'm not saying this to sell books, I promise. I'm saying this because the cover of the book actually tells the story. I personally designed that cover, right? The publisher gave a cover for Woke Inc., my first book. I said, no, I don't want that. Here's the cover I want. And what you'll see is on that cover, a bunch of different black or brown fists sort of standing for the, yes, BLM, Black Pride, whatever it is. And the fist that is actually held the highest is one that has a suit, a cuff, a nice watch, holding a wad of dollars. And it happens to be one that was white, actually. But that's an interesting summation of the thesis of that book, is I just believe in calling out hypocrisy wherever it occurs. I think hypocrisy is bad. It breeds distrust. And, I think that some of the greatest connections I've had in the base of support I saw towards the end of the campaign, not in the beginning, but towards the end of it, was actually a lot of black men actually loved the campaign by the end of it. I'm not drawing like an overgeneralization to say there's a reason why. I'm just telling you something I noticed, which was interesting. Might have been after I went on programs like the Breakfast Club. I went on that a couple times and, went on some non-traditional programs where Republicans don't show up. We visited the south side of Chicago, a room that's 95% black that we were in. Got my hair cut at a barber shop that I don't think a Republican politician's been to in history. I don't think probably a Democratic politician at the national level's been to either. But have open conversations that we're not having in the country, but actually having it honestly. You know what? Were a lot of people in that room pissed when they said I was against racial reparations? Yeah, they were. In fact, the woman who asked me the question in front of that audience, I'm kidding you not. I told her the same things I'm telling you. I'm against affirmative action. I'm against racial reparations. She mid-question just turns around, turns her back to me and walks straight out in the middle of the event. And you were getting some boos and hisses from other people in the room. But the other people in the room stayed and agreed with me that they should not be converting South Shore High School into an encampment for illegal migrants at $7,000 per migrant per month, when a lot of people in that community ask, what the heck about me as an American actually lawfully living my life here? And we actually found a lot of agreement on that. Or the fact that we shouldn't be forking over more money to Ukraine so some kleptocrat can buy a bigger house. It's the big Lavish Mansions problem is not limited to BLM. It applies to the kleptocrats in Ukraine as well, while our own Americans are suffering right here at home in squalor in cities from the south side of Chicago to Kensington in the inner city of Philadelphia. More third world than the third world India that I used to visit as a kid at my dad's behest. You want to go to the third world, just go to Kensington during the daytime today. I wouldn't even advise you to go at night. Just go during the daytime, because going at night I couldn't in good conscience advise you to do. But go during the daytime to Kensington and see what you see in this country. Yeah, I do think that's a message that I hope speaks to a lot of people regardless of their race. And I was gratified. Actually, towards the end of the race, we started seeing people of different races that weren't traditional Republican supporters that became, some of them, diehard supporters of my own candidacy, which actually left me heartened for what we're going to see in this country is the possibility, dare I say it, of national unity. You're seeing it in President Trump's numbers in what they call persons of color, voters of color, or young voters. Forget the boundaries of yesterday. Right? Forget about them. These boundaries and these identities are so confining. Anytime somebody tries to give you an identity, forget racial identity, even that you're supposed to be an engineer or you're supposed to be a doctor or whatever. Identities are confining, right? Forget the identity that somebody else gives you. You are you, the only you. You're going to be able to not just ride some tectonic plate of group identity, but you're able to determine what you achieve and what you want to achieve in the short time you're given, with your own dedication and your own free will that God gave you, and nobody's going to take that away from you. Not BLM, not some government, not some cultural trend coming from the left or right. I don't care. That's what I stand for, and I care about reviving that in this country, and that's why I ran for president. And there's probably a million things I could have done better to be a better candidate, but I hope to learn from that, and if I ever do something like that in the future, that's the purpose that I'll hopefully keep front and center, if there's a next time around.
Well, look, I truly appreciate you coming in, and I really respect your decision to run for president and open up your personal and professional life for public scrutiny for a greater purpose. It's one thing to start a business, be a CEO, even of a public company, but actually running for the highest public office is really something that very few people actually do. And I really admire you standing on your ideals, and I can't wait for what you have coming in the future.
Thank you, man. I love honest and open conversations like this. Truth is, I'm actually now curious about your audience. Maybe I should have asked you before we started, but I have no idea what your audience composition is of Republican, Democrat, or anything else. But regardless, I appreciated your curiosity and your open-mindedness. I think we need more of that in our media environment. And so, if you're up for it, maybe this doesn't have to be the last time we do this. I actually enjoyed this quite a bit.
Absolutely. Can't
Cool.
wait to do it again.
Yeah.
Until
Take
next
it easy,
time.
man. And actually, one of the things I'm doing, I'll say this before I leave too, for people who are interested in continuing conversations like this. That's why I relaunched the podcast that we started during the presidential campaign. It's called Truth, right?
Yeah,
One
I
simple
watched it.
word. And so maybe you can come on my podcast and we can have you continue the conversation in reverse. But I'm not in this as, there's better ways to make money than be in the podcast business, believe me on that. But I'm in this to continue the same mission of saying the things that you're not supposed to say necessarily, but that actually reflect your true beliefs and allow us to revive an honesty in our discourse. And so, if people want to continue this conversation, we're doing that every week. And, I encourage people to check that out as well. So thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And I'll do your show next.
Yeah, let's do it. We'll have some fun.
That's what it is. Peace.
Thanks.